to give us a preview of what they've got proposed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to recognize that Board Member Cardenas is here from White City. This is his first official meeting here present, and Anthony swore him in last month, so after the last meeting. So welcome.
Thank you.
You bet. So this is our proposed budget. As you mentioned, we'll be presenting our tentative budget in October, and we'll ask for tentative adoption at that time. That's the standard process by state statute. So for this budget, I wanted to make sure that I pointed out that we have had a big turnaround with the recycling markets, thankfully, and it is because of that that we've been able to absorb or manage the increased costs with salary increases for our frontline equipment operators. It was significant amounts that you approved, and I thank you, and our staff thank you. Very appreciative of that. As you know, the CDL drivers are a precious commodity right now, so to speak. Just very thankful that we have such a great team here, really good souls that are providing the service. So that is one of the ways we've been able to absorb that, and Paul can get more into that as we go. We are not recommending a fee increase for 2022 for the base fee. We do have some other fees that we are asking for increases or proposing increases related to cans, because the price of each curbside can has gone up. Right now they're at 60, I believe. It is fluctuating. There was one point it was 75, so petroleum is fluctuating as far as that commodity and the price for that petroleum per gallon, and per barrel, excuse me, for the cans, it's oil. So the residential fee will remain at $17 a month, $51 a quarter, $204 annually. We want to have the same great services that we've been providing in 2020 and 2021. And why I called that out is specifically because of the annual container reservation, formerly known as the area cleanup. I've asked staff to memorialize the fact that we changed that service and changed the title of that service. So rather than area cleanup, annual area cleanup, it would be something different. Our staff are having a meeting on October 7th, I believe, Anthony, is that correct?
I believe so.
To brainstorm ways to improve the service. We already know that reservations can be cumbersome. The vision of having a different website and a better scheduling tool did not come to fruition because of COVID. So I'll be working with IS providers to try to get a different vendor that can deliver the services that we need through our website going forward. So the reservation program, we want to continue that. It provides a way for residents to remove their bulky waste. I'm thankful we can still provide something. It may not be the dream of the containers in the street, but it also prevents those landfills and the scavenging, which creates messes for our team to have to manage, and that means more staffing, and we just can't get the staffing. The wage increases have helped a great deal, but in order to run the regular program, we need, 21 CDL drivers and then the ground crew. And so to get that many has been tough. We've been thankful to get 16 to try to manage this particular delivery with the reservations. We'll continue on with the seasonal services with central leaf bag collections. That's going to start up next month. The curbside Christmas tree, which is in January. And then we have the landfill vouchers that no other provider does or municipality does. That's for residents to take their truck or trailer load to the landfill. We pay for that. And then the discounted rate for trailer rentals for bulky and green. Any questions on that before I roll along?
Could you remind us how many containers there are when you do it? I think you mentioned it. I didn't hear it.
So when we do the reservation, it's up to 100 a day. When it's out in the street, it's 125, plus all the piles. And we used to do the green waste separately at the curb, which we had to back, because we just can't do it, we can't staff it.
Okay, that's how many reservations, but how many total containers are there that get moved around?
There's 100.
There are 100 containers.
We have actually 125 containers,
Oh, okay.
so we are utilizing about 100 a day.
So does one container only go to one location and that's it for the day?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You bet, absolutely. Good question. I didn't leave anything out on that. So, the other thing I wanted to mention is we're proposing to add a new fee for those particular containers, those 14-yard containers. Last year and this year, we've had a lot of requests from municipalities to use those containers for special cleanups or emergency cleanups. And we've basically been going off of the fee that's in our toy book, which is for emergency management. So we want to formalize a fee to make sure we cover the cost up to 2 tons. And so we'll get into that as we go. No questions right now anyway. I think this is one of the biggest thoughts right here, for their personnel budget. And I'm going to ask Melissa and Andrea to come on up to the table if you would. Come on up. So Melissa Cotter, who you know, is our compensation consultant, and she's been working with Andrea and myself, Paul, looking at the markets out there, salary markets, and so she's brought forth a proposal. Originally, earlier this year, we thought that COLA would be recommended to be higher. The comp data that Melissa has pulled shows about a 1.5% COLA, well, basically a 3.5 overall increase for salaries. But I have a different recommendation or request, actually, but I'm going to let Melissa address this if you would.
Sure. So this is the time of year that companies will report what they project for what they're going to increase their salary budgets and as well as their employee merit pays for 2022. I pulled my data from Employers Council. They're a reputable company who has a lot of organizations in Utah and as well as the western United States area. The data that I've looked at is based upon the Utah market and as well as where Woodford is located, which is considered in their survey Wasatch South. And so overall, in the state of Utah, there's a 3.2% increase across the board that companies are truly going to implement for 2022. Within the Wasatch South, it's 3.2 as well. When you compare it within industry size, they didn't have a lot of government representation, and so unfortunately, there was 3 companies that reported, and their data reported that it was a 3.7. I thought that wasn't high enough for me to feel comfortable in recommending, just because there was just 3 incumbents that reported that data. But really our direct competitor is the manufacturing area, just because a lot of who we recruit with and who we go after, and that ranged anywhere between 3.2% for an actual employee increase, but then as far as a salary range increase, within the manufacturing area, they're adjusting it by 3.7%. So overall, I think my recommendation of 3.5 keeps us at market, but we might end up lagging as we just have a really hard time with just competing with not just within the government sector, but also within the manufacturing sector. So that's why I support the recommendation that Pam has in front of you.
Thank you. Yeah, request that is slightly higher than what Melissa is recommending, and also after talking with Melissa and Andrea, the salary data that we're able to pull off of the surveys, studies that are submitted don't include the private haulers. So that's another reason why I'm requesting higher, because that is direct competition. I do realize that if we go up, they go up, and it just seems to be this ongoing competition. But I feel like we are a good employer in that we have a good culture and that we treat our employees very well. Not saying that private haulers don't, I just think that we're different, and I'm glad to say it's a positive difference. So that is why I'm requesting slightly higher than what Melissa has recommended, and I respect the fact that you're supporting that. Thank you so much. So the cost difference, I wanted to make sure that we called that out for you. We're talking about $33,427 more than what Melissa is recommending. And then Paul actually put in the proposed budget. Let me scroll down if you'll bear with me for a moment. And let me blow that up slightly. So there's 9.6 million is the 1.5, and I added a little note down here at the bottom that to increase that with the 2% COLA that I've requested would take it up to just over 1 million. So I want to make sure that you are aware of all that. I'm not asking you to approve this right now. I'm just asking you to entertain it and understand that that is what's proposed. And also we're proposing that we increase the seasonal temp staff at dairy cleanup as well as our part-time customer service. We do have part-time staff that run the lease program, and then sometimes when we need help on the containers, delivery, repair, we hire part-time there as well. So we're asking for a 4% overall increase for them. And again, those are non-benefited positions, so we want to try to give them a little oomph so that they can pay the bills. Health insurance, go ahead, sorry.
I'm trying to understand the 2% is what you have is 2% and another 2%. Is the 2% 33, so 4% 66?
No, sir, I'm sorry. So the 1.5 COLA and then the 2% merit, so sorry, yeah, they're 3.5 overall here, and that's what's in the line item budget that you see, that amount. So for the 2% COLA, so increasing that COLA by 0.5%, that's where that 33.
So the 33 is a 0.5%.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you for clarifying.
So the total increase overall is about $250,000. It looks like.
For the whole COLA and the merit from the.
I mean, if the 33 is a 0.5, 8 times that's going to be.
Scroll to that, Paul. From the 2021.
Well, and we have other things in there too. It's not just that increase. We've increased wages twice this year, and those are in there, a full year's worth. And then also that would include the increase for the temporary employees. And then the other thing to remember is when we budget, we assume the positions are full the complete year. And so there's other things in there that bump that amount up, not just this increase.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Let's go away.
You never asked these questions on clarification, but there we go. We talked a lot about the salaries, but the salaries don't, this is base pay, this would include any, bonuses, any coverage.
Correct.
Which costs us a lot of money. About what percentage?
For health insurance or benefits all told?
Personnel altogether are almost 40%, so it's a big piece of work.
So 40% of what they're getting is benefits?
Oh, no.
How much percentage of their pay is benefits?
It's about 30% of the base wage.
So about 30%. Now, we've discussed this a lot about, you know, the problem is sometimes you get younger drivers or things like that. All they're looking at is their income. But as a company, we can't just look at that because it's still costing us a lot of money for the benefits. The question is, can they opt out of those benefits? And do we roll it into a salary? Or is that even legal? Or what do we do with that?
Good question. So the things they can opt out of would be the health insurance only, because we have to be part of URS, and then we have, like, which we have an alternative for that with the ICMA. So those would be the required. Otherwise, it would just be the health insurance, dental, things of that nature. And I believe vision is basically elective. Some of our benefits are elective, so they can opt in or out. for health insurance, not every employee is insured under the district. They might be insured through their spouse or some other means.
Are most of them, and they sell private?
The percentage, most of them are insured. District, I could provide the percentage, I don't
So they're
have.
utilizing benefits?
Yes, yeah.
So, regarding your question, I thought you were asking if they opt out, then do they get an increase in their take-home pay? I would hope that's not the case.
We have not done that.
Okay.
Well, and that's what I was asking, because most of them are participating in the benefits, and there's really no way to opt out of that 30% that we're paying, right? It's really never a savings, because the portion of it is pretty small by the time we get down to medical and things like that, right?
Yeah, and I guess the other point is I don't know if we really can opt out of health insurance altogether.
Right.
I think there's some sort of a requirement federally. It's been a while, and I'm not on insurance, so.
Sure. And I was just trying to figure out how we get people to understand the true benefit of that additional 30%.
Sure.
Are they getting that same thing as the private haulers? Are they getting the same types of benefits? So it's the same. Even though
really,
it's not calculated into here, they're getting the same benefits with private haulers as they are with us.
the majority, yes, and even retirement, we used to argue about we have a better retirement. Well, now the private haulers have basically had to step up their game. So we're seeing that, and they'll do a sign-on bonus, and we don't do that, and I'm not recommending that we do that.
Right.
Yeah, so there's different ways that they are compensating their employees to offset some of the things that some of the perks we have as government employees, if you will. So we're just still trying to remain competitive, and I'll be honest that my request for the 2% is because I don't want to chase the markets anymore.
Sure.
I'm kind of tired of, and it's hard to come back to you, every year and say, oh, we were there and now it's shifted. So my hope is that 2% COLA will shift the range, even though it's 0.5%. I mean, I would love to request higher than that, but I also know that we need to sustain our organization, and we're not requesting a fee increase. So I feel comfortable that this will be sustainable financially and then sustainable with markets. But I say that now, and I'm markets we know. So did that?
Yeah, I think across the board are chasing us, police department, everywhere, everything we touch up. But I was just curious because that was always the perk of working for a government entity or something like that, was that the benefit,
Yeah.
even though you take a little bit less as a salary, the benefits over time make the difference in that, but it's not the case anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. I wish.
No, it's okay. I just needed to understand that, so we truly do need to take the market because the playing field is level.
Thank you so much for asking the questions, yeah. So moving into the health insurance, good lead into that, good segue, is that we're very thankful that we are only going to receive a 2.3% increase in premiums from PEHP. We went out and shopped last year, and I think we got their attention because the economic forecast shows at least a 7% increase. Some showed a 9%, so we were very thankful to see that come in low. And then we also get a rebate back, depending on how much we spend each year. And I think this year, Paul, we got more than we have in the past. I won't throw out a dollar amount because I don't remember off the top of my head.
I can't remember the exact amount. I'm thinking it was around 40,000.
40.
Remember, Andrea? But it was higher than what we were anticipating because I was concerned they were going to, that rebate, once we went out last year and shopped, they were going to reduce our rates a little and then really reduce the rebate, and that did not happen. The rebate stayed up really relatively high to where it's been in the past, and so we feel like that was a good benefit for us.
Yeah. And then to speak to your point, Board Chair Orrin, is that we do have really good benefit package. We keep an 80-20 split for the premium, that we pay 80 and the employees pay 20. Jumping down, I'm going to go back to the other piece, but the low deductibles with traditional having a 500 for single, 1,000 for family, and then the high deductible plan has 2,000 single and 4,000 for the family. And you mentioned the pension here for the URS, the Tier 1 and Tier 2. So going back, I should have put this under compensation, I apologize, but looking at Phase 3, just a reminder that we did roll out Phase 1 and 2, and that was to look at for equipment operators paying by experience or paying for experience. So going into Phase 3, Melissa's recommendation was to look at the district-wide, all employees, to make sure we're treating everybody fairly and equitably. So we're going to go through an evaluation period. In fact, it's started now. Well, where all other positions, including the container specialists, customer service, the managers, supervisors, will go through and record any of their time experience that would relate to their current position that was before workload. That makes sense. So that's being done right now. We'll come back with recommendations next year. But we want to determine those costs and then try to manage those, not try, we're going to manage those increased costs. But that will come back before you, probably January, February, in that time frame. We're going to be looking at, do we need a full-time safety and emergency coordinator? We currently have a part-time safety coordinator, but there's a piece of our responsibility, and 2020 really showed that with the emergencies that happened and our responsiveness. We try to juggle many responsibilities. So David Icka has really spearheaded a lot of the emergency cleanups that we helped with last year, especially while I was out for my surgery, and Paul jumped in and helped out too. But it's not just the fact that I was out, it's that really there's a big responsibility to make sure that we're ready to respond when there are emergencies. So it would be basically someone designated to not only be our safety coordinator, but an emergency coordinator. And of course, anytime I come back to you for a requested FTE, I always prove the fact, what's the gap, what's missing, and how would that be fulfilled. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that we're going to evaluate that. And if I can prove the case, I'll probably come back to you sometime next year requesting that either for 2022 or going forward into 2023.
Maybe you can make sure you schedule any time off with emergency.
Right. Right. I think that windstorm was like 2 weeks after my surgery, so I was delirious as I was trying to talk to Paul and David. Okay, let's look at operations now.
Pam?
Yes, ma'am.
You want to talk about one?
Oh, thank you, Melissa. So, Friday, as I was heading down to a wedding in St. George on my motorcycle, it occurred to me that we needed to come back to you and talk about a lump sum for those employees that are at the top of their range. So they would not be eligible for the merit increase. We think that the range would move enough with that 2% that they would still get a COLA and fill that COLA, but where they may not, they're maxed out so they wouldn't get a COLA, we need to have some alternative for them because we want to recognize that they have performed and met expectations. So I emailed Melissa and Andrea and said, hey, we need to come back to the board and say, what are we going to recommend for that? So Melissa, would you speak to that, please?
Yeah, so the majority, just because with this last Phase 2, we adjusted the matrix compression to any employee who's got at least 15 years in their current position, that they're at 100% of the range. And so even if we adjust the range by the recommended, with Pam's recommendation of 2%, they're going to receive that at the beginning of the year. But then they're also going to be due in 2022 their merit increase. But it's really difficult to give a merit increase if now they're redlined, which means that they're at the max of their range. So the recommendation is to allow a lump sum merit performance increase at time of their merit date, and the fact that they have satisfactory performance. So we still recommend that these long-term employees have a merit increase, but instead of increasing their wage, we're just giving them a lump sum based upon their satisfactory performance. And you can see from the calculation, if you do a 1.5% COLA or if you do a 2% COLA, Both of them are within that, we're recommending 1,500 because we don't want to have to come back to the board every year and say, oh, we need to give this, we need to give this. And this only calculates an annualized increase, which is the 2,080 hours, which is a normal hours within a year. We do know that these two positions probably will have overtime calculated into their hours. And so this kind of offsets that and gives those employees that $1,500 lump sum merit performance. So it's not necessarily tied to their hours, but it's just tied to a dollar amount that's based upon what WFWRD would give them for satisfactory performance.
Question.
Yeah.
So, how many employees currently fit that maximum level? What percent or how many?
Within the lead equipment operator, we have some that are at the 90th percentile right now, so they've got another year, 2 years before they're going to be at that 100%. But within the equipment operator, I believe we counted 11 employees that are there at that 100%.
Okay, thanks.
I feel like we did something like this 2 years ago, something like that.
So
And this kind of goes back to the feedback that Andrea received, where when we went back and looked at prior years' experience, some current employees were feeling like, you don't recognize me for being here and sticking with this and staying long-term. And this is just communicating to them that we are grateful that you're here, and we're grateful that you've reached the maximum of the range. That means that you've worked really hard to get there. And it allows them to know that they're still rewarded for the performance that they continue to do for WFWRD.
Instead of almost looking like they were getting penalized for hitting the max.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. We want long-term employees here.
yeah, so for that 11, it'd be about 16,500 annual.
Was that included in any of your budget numbers?
No, when I did the budget numbers, I still included that. It wasn't, I included them at 2% and 1.5% at the 3.5%. So I'd have to go in and change that and then put this number in for that.
Yeah, sorry I didn't think about that sooner. We'll have that for the October tentative budget. Thank you very much. All right, so getting into the operational highlights, these are some of the goals that we want to accomplish. Again, we have the website there. Want to evaluate ways to improve that container reservation program. Always looking at risk management and mitigating risks. We want to target our safety training to identify root causes of those issues or incidents and prevent them as we learn. We want to manage the increased disposal costs for garbage. Trans-Jordan has been going up $2 a ton. They went up last July. They're on a fiscal calendar year, so we compensate that going forward. The annual cost for that is $42,600. And Salt Lake Valley Transfer Station will go up $1 per ton, and that's estimated about an $80,000 increased cost to us. And then just a reminder, as far as transfer station versus Salt Lake Valley landfill, we do take waste directly to the landfill, and we pay $27 a ton for that. So we take the routes that are most optimal for price and proximity, which is mainly Magna and Kern. The curbside, as well as when we did area cleanup, all went to that landfill for the $27. That is a nice savings. And then we continue on with sustainability. Want to dedicate the needed resources for education. Ethan Morris, who's in this picture right up here, is instrumental in developing our education program and then implementing it with our quality assurance officers as well. And then always we're looking for ways to improve efficiencies, manage the recycling and garbage load so that we don't have, half a truck going to empty, that they're getting a full load to make sure they get emptied on both those commodities. And then we get into the numbers, and this is where I turn it over to Paul.
Yeah, fun numbers, huh?
Yeah.
But just just to go through this, as far as the columns, we have the categories down the left side with the titles explaining what it is. And then across the top, the actual 2020 numbers, those are audited numbers that are finalized and where we ended up. So for the year, our revenues less expenses was a negative $1 million and approximately $7,000. And then we go over the budget. The adopted budget for 2021 is in that next column. And then the estimated current year for 2021, and what we do for that is take the numbers as of the end of July and try to roll them forward and estimate using those numbers, and then with also current situations or current circumstances, what's going to change. And so right now, for the end of the year, we're projecting revenues less expenses of around a negative $500,000. And then the next column, the preliminary budget for 2022, that's really what we're doing, want to focus on today and look at some of those numbers for the future. And so we'll just go through some of these categories. The charge for services, we're showing a slight increase there versus last year, and then also versus the budget, versus this year, 2021, and then also the budget for 2021. And that's really fees for green, and mainly our base service fees are increasing there. The non-operating revenues, we're showing a decrease next year, and that's primarily due to we're going to sell more trucks, and we have a loss when we sell those side load trucks right now. And then also, there was another item. I did not include the CNG alternative fuels rebate in there. We're not sure if we're going to get that or not, but if we don't, that would be a decrease too. They've had it the last 3 years, but they don't give you a lot of notice on it, and sometimes it's even been retroactive. And so I hate to budget for it, put $130,000 in there if I'm not more confident than that. And then it's the federal government, and I'm always a little questionable on putting that in. But that was part of the decrease. That's the major contributors to the decrease in non-operating revenues. Getting down in expenses, we're projecting about $8.6 million to finish this year, and then $9.6 million next year. And we just talked about that, some of the reasons. Those personnel expenses are 40% of our total, approximately 40% of our total budgeted expenses. And those are increasing. That is, once again, those positions are calculated as being full for the complete time, whether it's FTEs or temporary. And so that number does include those positions. A significant increase there, and we anticipate that's going to continue in the future, just in the market that we're in. So, the next one, fuel, we increased that 7.5% versus where we think we'll end this year. We did look at some national publications. We talked with Fleet about that, and we'll see diesel, they're both up this year. Diesel's up significantly this year. PNG's up not near what diesel is. But we did project that at 7.5%. The next one, maintenance, we projected that as increasing 6%. We met with Fleet, and they anticipate about a 3% increase approximately for labor, but parts are where we're really anticipating more of an increase. I just got an email from them last week, and they talked with NAPA, and it's their parts they're projecting up around 8%, 7-8%, and then that's if they can get them. I mean, they've had challenges, and we met them just like everyone else. So, going down the disposal fees, though they're up 5.7%. I actually ran just a spreadsheet on that with the different sites that we take to, and also the projected tons to get that number, but up about 5.7% in total. And that includes the disposal fees for Salt Lake County, and then Trans-Jordan, and also ACE. Recycling fees, this is a tough one. What we put in there was $30 a ton times 21,500 tons. The $30 a ton is higher a cost right now than what we're paying now, or what the market is right now, but it's just so volatile, and we're not 100% confident we're going to be as low as we are, and it could change. And so we're building some, I think, caution in with that number, but we wanted to do that. And recycling, we've talked about that before, but it's underlying commodities markets, and then it's not just one commodities market, it's several, whether it's aluminum, cardboard, the plastics, and so you got all these different factors going on that affect that, and it seems to be really volatile. Hopefully, it stays where we're at, or we go, it improves for us, and it has, and really helped us out.
Yeah, in fact, for September, we will receive a revenue, and we haven't received revenue for 3 or 4 years. So, yeah, we're hoping that sustains, or at least doesn't tank again.
The next one, the can and container purchases, they're up 38%. Again, on the cans that we use for the side load, those were $49 last year. The last amount we purchased was $60, and we're thinking they're going to be $75 probably in the future. We had Andy King, he did talk with the manufacturers, and we think those are going up. So that's a pretty healthy increase, 38% overall. And then that would also include like when we order 8-yard containers for the front load, and those have doubled in price too due to steel. So you see these and you're like, holy cow, within the time frame, how quick it's increased. Better really get your attention on some of these costs. The next one, county IT, we have that up approximately 10%. We'll see how that goes. We get some communication from them, but they're really not finalized on their numbers either. They said it was going to increase, and we'll see where that ends up. County rent left it the same as what we paid this year. The county interlocal building costs increased that 3%, and then also we included an amount in there. They're going to redo the cameras for this area, and we'll pay a portion of that. So, the operations truck lease, this year we're paying approximately $90,000. Next year, $282,000. We did get that number from Public Works, and the situation with that is we were using old trucks, and now we have new trucks this year. And so, and they lag the way they do it. The new trucks, we're really going to be charged more for their cost next year, and this year we're really still being charged for the old trucks. But that's why there's a significant increase there. Going down, that's mailing, postage, bank fees, those type of things. We projected about 9% increase. And then also the depreciation expense, I actually do a schedule, have a buy truck, buy asset, and it goes out, and so that depreciation expense is calculated for each asset. So when we look down, when we budget, we need to have that revenues less expenses be 0. And so up at the top, the third line down, we show a use of fund balance of approximately $3 million. And so that's kind of a plug figure so that we get 0 in the revenues less expenses. And that's assuming we spent everything in these categories and up to 100%. But are there any questions on this? I know there's a lot of information and a lot of numbers.
Your estimated 2021 use of funds is actually looking to be, I guess this is going to be the 495?
Yes. Well, if you were comparing when it's actual,
Yep.
yes, when it's actual, you show that revenue less expenses. But as far as a comparison, yes, that is correct. That would be the number, around $500,000. But that can also swing significantly. For example, I know I've talked before, but when we get URS information, a lot of times those amounts can really fluctuate year to year depending upon what their actuaries provide. And I don't know those in advance. We don't get those until February usually. Any other questions?
Let me just point out for the property insurance and claims, that's auto, property. The workers' comp is actually budgeted into the personnel expenses. Is that correct, Paul?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out. That's another piece that's in that personnel. Okay. All right, ready to move on?
And then moving on, the next one, we've seen this before. We added some colors, trying to line it up a little. So, but anyway, what we're doing here is trying to look at our cash and what we project our cash balances will be. When we do that, we include amounts in PTIF and also in the Zion's institutional liquidity management account that we have. And we include those as cash because they're very liquid, and if we need access to those, we get it. And so Looking at these, the first 2 years, those are actual numbers. Down there, about 2/3 of the way down, we see ending cash and investment balances, $10.5 million, and then $10.1 million for 2020. And then also, we added this past year, cash over operational expenses. So we're looking at that cash balance over the operational expenses line to kind of give us a feel and a trend of where we think we're going as far as our cash balance and its coverage of our operational expenses. So we have the first 2 years there. The next year, 2021, that's an estimate, and that's really based off that estimated column that we just looked at. And so for the end of 2021, we're projecting our cash balance will be approximately around $9 million. And then the preliminary budget numbers were used for 2022. And then when I projected out 2023 through 2026, I generally go increase revenues 1%, expenses 3%, but there's some exceptions to that too. For example, depreciation expense, I actually figure it out by asset for each year. I don't take a percentage. I actually try to get closer on depreciation expense. But when you look at this, one thing I wanted to point out, the operational expenses that are in yellow, we took those off the projections and then times them by 94%. And I think that's going to get us much closer to what our real realistic cash balance number is instead of 100%. And what that means is when we budget, we do not want to exceed our expenses. And then also, I've talked before, we have a lot of costs that are very volatile when you start looking at fuel and recycling. And so we do want to have some cushion in there for what we view as kind of an amount that if the markets do go up, we'll still be covered. We don't want to come back to the board on a regular basis saying, oops, we've exceeded our expenses. And so that's part of it. And then it's also just the nature of our business, I think, where it's volatile. But those expenses, I went back and looked at historically what we've done to come up with that 94% number. Because before, when we use 100%, I was concerned we were showing our cash balance going down quicker than it actually would. And I think it raised a lot of concern and worry, and I don't think that's the actual case. So, but I still think overall, when we look at this, I'm confident our cash balance is going to decrease over the next year or two. And it's really due to what we talked about, personnel costs, inflationary pressures when we buy things, pay for fuel, those type of things. So, any questions on this sheet? Really, that ending cash and investment balance, 3 lines up from the bottom is what we're projecting out. And when we look at this, we feel like we will need to, consider a fee increase next year that would be effective in 2023.
And then just a note, next month, Paul's going to bring forward the third quarter financial report and also the investment account report that board member Marchand had asked about. But with this 7.2 right here for the ending cash investment, just to note that right now we have about a 7.1 million in our investment account with Zions. We're not sure if we'll need to draw that down because we have a working capital with Zions Bank, and then we also have the PTIF that we move money in and out of, but trying to get the best bang for the buck for interest. But just to note that 7.1 million in investment, we may need to draw that down. Hopefully not, but just so you have a heads up.
Well, I appreciate the colors because that helps me see what's past and easily what's going forward. It made it a lot easier to read. So.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move forward. This just puts into picture really what our expenses are. And when we look at this, we've talked about personnel is really the lion's share of our expenses. And then we have disposal fees would be the second one, and then maintenance would be the third category. And so it really just shows that a lot of our expenses are really in 3 major categories, or a large share of our expenses. And then this is our projected capital expenditures for 2022. We talked about this at our last meeting. We ordered 8 side load trucks. At that $2.7 million total cost, 3 light duty trucks, at $145,000. And then 2 front load trucks, we've ordered those, but I put those in here just so we're aware of that. And then also we're planning on making one payment of those in 2021, a payment on those, and then also the second payment in 2022. We'll see how that goes, because we've experienced lags in our purchasing too of trucks. And so we anticipate that, and when we budgeted originally, we thought that would happen, and we'll see what happens with that. But $344,000 is the amount we're projecting to pay in 2022 for those 2 front load trucks.
Notice that nice, shiny, new side load truck that came in.
Yeah, they almost look pretty when they're new, just like a lot of things.
Almost?
Yeah.
They're gorgeous. That's how I know I'm in the right business. Okay, so thank you so much, Paul. I'll move into what we're proposing for our fee schedule, because that's part of the proposed budget and something that you'll need to tentatively adopt next month. Pending your direction, we'll make any changes that you see fit. We're looking at 2 areas of changing. One is the miscellaneous charges, and then, as I mentioned, we want to add a new fee for the roll-off containers, where we can actually charge, well, we do charge anyway, but it's formalized and adopted by you as a board. The miscellaneous fees have to do with cans. As I mentioned, the curbside cans have gone up. So right now, we basically charge a $50 per can fee, and we want to raise that to $60 per can. And looking at the markets for that and the commodities, as Paul mentioned, we're paying $60, $65, and it's projected to go up higher, but we've also heard that there's a bubble of inflated costs right now that could actually level out. So to make sure we're not going to overcharge for those cans, I'm recommending or proposing that we increase that from 50 to 60. There's a couple of can charges that we do for the delivering of a can. We charge $10. I learned recently that it's difficult for our staff to charge 2 separate startup costs, so to speak, or so for example, we'll charge $60 for the startup fee for a new home per can, so $120 is what it will be. We want to include a delivery fee on top of that, so rather than having them broke out, I'm proposing that we include that delivery fee for all of the can charges that we have. And I'll go through that, and you can just tell me if it makes sense or what have you. The delivery fee came about in 2014 when we rolled out the curbside green. We wanted to make sure we charged for the can and then the delivery. That's where that came from. And then in 2017, we moved we started the new home fee, or startup fee for new homes, and started charging for the can plus the delivery, which was $60 total. So what I'm proposing is that we just have one lump amount for replacing a can, and this is for any can that's damaged, not the normal wear and tear or damaged by our trucks, but the customer requests a replacement, or like, for example, this melted recycle can, that's from fireworks. That does happen in both the black and the blue can. So we would charge the resident for that, the $70, and that would include the delivery fee as well. And then again, for the startup cost for a new home, we would ask that we move from what used to be the 110 would now go up to, and where did I have that? 130. Thank you, Board Chair. We're going to increase that to 130, which is the 2 cans for $60 each, plus the delivery fee. And then we also, just so you know, we have an alternative. If a resident says, I want my can exchanged, it's smelly, I don't want to clean it, so come give me a new one. But they have a choice. They can either pay that $70 or they can pay $35 for a refurbished can. So that does take staff time to clean up old cans and then deliver them again. So that's what that is. Any questions on that? I tried to make it a summary, but there's so much in there. The other thing I mentioned is the roll-off container, so I'm proposing that we add a $120 fee, and that would be up to 2 tons. And just so you know, the average tonnage in those containers is maybe a ton and a half, so this would cover that cost. And then for anything over 2 tons, if it is really heavy, we would charge whatever the fee is at the dumping facility where we take it, and that does range. The $27 that I mentioned was the Salt Lake Valley landfill. It'll be $34 at the transfer station, and $35 at Transjordan. That's why there's a range there. And we would be very transparent on the bills. Any questions on that? I was trying to summarize all of this that's in here. So as you can see, those can fees were all over the place, so I thought just one to ease the process for staff so there's not confusion. Any questions on the fees? And then the new fees right there. Okay, where are we at? So, Mr. Chair, I would ask for any direction for going forward and putting together our tentative budget to bring back to you in October for tentative adoption. And I guess the biggest thing I need direction on is the recommendation or my request for the personnel of the 2% COLA, 2% merit, and then 4% for the temps. That's all, the temps already in there. So it'd be adding the $33,000, understanding that depending on how many employees would be at that top of the range, they would get that lump sum versus the salary increase at the 2%. So there might be some variance there. That's why we want to make sure we get your direction. How best would you allow us to proceed?
I'd be glad to make a motion. And I think you've presented all of the details for us rather plainly, and that they make sense to me. I would make a motion that we approve the proposed 2022 budget and fee schedule as presented.
2% COLA?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
There's a motion, we can take a second to that as well. That's fine too, with the details. We'll have a tentative budget if we need to make a slight adjustment there, because the tentative budget, once approved, is what's going to get published for the final budget adoption in November. So, we can you stick those numbers in there that way, and then we can, if there's some concerns or some other items there, then we can make adjustments just as we, actually approve that budget. That was, Dwight has made a motion. I'll go ahead and take a second if someone's,
I'd second that.
all right. All those in favor of giving that direction to Pam, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to 3.2, Pam's report. There's a couple of items here, so.
Okay, I'll have Andrea take this first A and B, if you would, for the HR update.
Last year, or maybe earlier this year, some questions about vaccinations and what we offer employees. So we just wanted to give you an update. We'll be holding our annual flu clinic this October 8th. This year they will include, in addition to the other vaccinations offered, COVID vaccine as well. So, B is...
Is that here on site?
Yes, in this room, in fact. The Salt Lake County Health Department provides it, and that we are just so thankful that we're able to offer that to our employees. They,
They start at 6 o'clock in the morning when the drivers get here.
yes, they'll be here at 6:30 for us, actually, so it's great.
But it doesn't much matter if they're here, if everyone's out driving.
Right.
Yes.
They're willing to work with our unique schedule, which we're very appreciative of. Item B is just a follow-up. Board Member Bradley, you had asked about employee turnover and retention, and so we're bringing forward some numbers from 2018 on, and I've included in here overall, all our overall employee turnovers. It's in blue, and then specifically driver employee turnover the last few years.
Andrew, you mentioned in the last board meeting how 2020 we were able to hold steady. We didn't have a lot of turnover, and we really contribute that to the COVID pandemic, and people wanted to stay secure. So we were very thankful for that. And then coming forward into 2021, you can see that it's going up slightly. But honestly, I think the fact that you all have approved those salary increases has really helped us to not get close to 2019 again. 2019 was really difficult for us to manage because we just didn't have a lot of staff.
Are there any questions on employee turnover rates?
Is that year-to-date, is that percentage annualized, or is that just the raw number so far?
The raw numbers so far.
Okay. So if you increase those by another 25%, that might be kind of where we're headed. I don't know, maybe we don't lose people at the end of the year.
Most to lose their job right before Christmas.
We just gave significant raises, so I
Right.
don't think they're gonna
And typically, you're right, we lose people starting spring, summer, I think when construction starts
Okay.
increasing.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, so, Ethan brought forward the food waste collection pilot that was going to roll out. There's been some delays for that, so for our participation, we're looking at next spring. So I just wanted to give you an update right now that Momentum's still trying to iron out the actual weeds of implementation, and once they do that, I'll be able to report back more. But I'm anticipating January, February, I can bring forward more information and make recommendations on our participation for our portion of the pilot. Right now, it looks like it would be the Mill Creek City area to roll out a pilot. Again, it would be a need for at least 30 to 50 subscribers. And then initially, for 3 months, it's free to that resident. And then there would be a fee, a monthly fee thereafter. And so that's some of the information that Momentum's trying to iron out. As far as the price of the can, would that, go forward with not having to charge for those cans, or what would be included in the monthly fee? Those are the details we're trying to get from Momentum, make sure everything's in line, and we have all the info. So that's where that's at. Yes, sir.
Not knowing anything about that, is there any place that I can find any more information just to learn about that? I hadn't heard about that.
If you'd like, I can send you some. I'd be happy to do that.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Absolutely. And then just so you know, something I've never reported to you as a board is that we do go through an annual permitting process with the Salt Lake County Health Department. So since we received our annual permit, I wanted to bring that before you. Normally we get this in January, but things were delayed, of course, because the health department's been dealing with a lot of stuff. But just so you know, we go through that. We do get a permit every year to operate as a waste hauler. There's no question.
That's good.
Whoops. What's that?
That's good.
Yeah, that was something that we started way back in '07, actually, that the division was kind of overlooked before, and it was one of those, yeah, we need to get this going, so, anyway. History you probably didn't even need to know.
Well, I don't feel like we've taken enough time on 3.2, so if we want to just sit, never mind. All right, next one is, do we have any status update on the, reorganization?
You want to start it off for us?
Well, I can tell you what I know, and Pam, you probably know as much as I on this. Also offer my apologies, this is not my finest morning, but I'm here.
Yes.
The Lisa Hartman, who's heading up the effort to analyze the impacts to the county, has completed her study. You were aware of that, I believe. And what the mayor's office is doing now is setting up meetings individually with each of the council members to explain the findings. And then after that happens, it'll be scheduled for the agenda. But realistically, because of several factors, some of which you know, having attended some of our meetings where we get absolutely nothing done because of a mask protest.
Why would that be?
And now we're entering into our budget season, and that's time-consuming. I'm not sure when that is going to be placed on the agenda, quite frankly. It'll happen after the council members have been briefed on the findings, and once that is done, then it'll be placed on the agenda. All right, and I can't tell you how soon that is. It's almost week to week in terms of what the agenda will handle.
Okay.
So, but is that enough? I mean,
Yeah.
we're still working on it. That's the good news.
That is really good news, and we have Lisa Hartman who's online. Lisa, I don't know if you want to say hello, and you would wave at us so we know which one you are in this window. There we go, thank you.
Lisa, did I describe that correctly?
Yes, you did. I think the only thing that I would add is just that our legal counsel has suggested for, and I think it's in the interest of both Salt Lake County and Wilford, are just the lease contract and the administration contract. Also just renegotiating those just based on two things. One is the lease, what happens after 2028, and then the admin contract. Just Pam and Kevin have a fantastic working relationship, and we just want to make sure that the contract will hold past personalities. I think that's a concern on both ends, is just making sure we have a contract in place that transcends personalities. And like I said, Pam and Kevin, if we could clone them and keep them forever, that would be awesome. But that was just a couple of the other things that we were thinking about. But other than that, we are moving along. And I know when you're anxious to get something done, it always seems like it takes a lot longer. So thank you for your patience. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no, I would say, you know, we're very, very interested in getting those details worked out. I know we just finished up working on the building lease arrangements, and that was one of our questions we had as well. What happens beyond 2028? So that's yeah, very positive. I think Pam will work on that.
Yes.
Do we have access to the findings that you're discussing with the other council members, or is that private information?
Did you catch that, Lisa?
Oh,
Hey,
yes.
Lisa, do you have access to the findings?
Once we share it with the council, yes. I mean, it's just giving them what, just internally our findings, and then also just what options the council has available to them, just for them to weigh those. But yes, I anticipate we will share those after we share those with the council members.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa, I appreciate that. Yeah, so just to reiterate, the lease agreement, just as a reminder, the lease goes up to 2028, and the big question that the board had last year when we talked about this was, well, what about after 2028? So there will be some answers to that, which I think will be good news, and that will come forward. And then I think for Lisa, the admin services, you'd mentioned Kevin. I want to make sure everybody knows who Kevin is. He's the Public Works Division Director, and we share this building with the Public Works Department. And we do have a great working relationship as with Fleet as well. They're over on the other side. However, there are services through that administrative service agreement that are specifically for Fleet, and that's one of our highest costs, is Fleet, for fuel and maintenance. And then IT is also a part of that, IS. We work with county IS.
And those services have been really quite good for you, have they not?
Say that, I'm sorry.
Well, those services have been been meeting all your needs.
Yes,
And, yeah,
absolutely.
so,
Yeah,
And there's a recognition that this building and the site were developed when this was a district, or a division, get the correct word in there, of the county, and so the building was designed for that, the site was, the service levels, and yes, they have been working out well, so, I think moving forward, we just realize that and, get all the details that need to be put in place. I think that works to everyone's advantage. Thank you, Lisa and Jim, for your work on that, and Pam, obviously.
I'm sitting here waiting, yeah, no,
Yeah.
but I don't have anything to add.
You've done a little bit of work on it.
I've done a little bit, but, yeah, everyone is, I know, so far.
All right. I am not aware of any items for a closed session. Is there any other board business or items that anyone wants to have on the agenda for next meeting or a soon-to-be meeting? All right, then if not, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody who wants to stay, you're welcome.